You can listen to the Canadian Gothic early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
Newly unsealed court documents in Lilly and Jack Sullivan's missing persons case are raising questions about the relationship between the children's mother, Melahya Brooks-Murray, and stepfather Daniel Martell.
Brooks-Murray said Martell would try to block her, hold her down. She said he would also take her phone from her when she tried to call her mom, which would sometimes be physical and hurt.
Those allegations are false. As I said, it was just to paint me in a bad light. That's basically why there's all of those allegations of abuse came out. I never physically abused Melahya.
You are listening to Canadian Gothic.
It's now been over 8 months since 4-year-old Jack and his 6-year-old sister, Lilly Sullivan, were reported missing from their home in rural Nova Scotia. Since then, the case has twisted and turned in nearly every direction, yet to this point, none have led back to the missing siblings. But it seems with each update, we're inching closer. Tonight, in this episode, Madeleine Klein and I will continue to break down those updates, and we have some fascinating ones to discuss. Most notably, we'll get into the further release of investigation documents related to this case and the bombshell statements by Jack and Lilly's mom Melahya that allege the children's stepfather Daniel was physically abusive. So grab a drink and let's get into it. Tonight, in the 15th episode of this Canadian Gothic series, we're again going to ask the big question: where are Jack and Lilly Sullivan? Ms. Madeleine Klein, we're back for round 15 of discussing the Jack and Lilly Sullivan case. It's been a while since we've done one, and I guess that's a statement to the state of this case. Things have been moving slow, but that's not to say things aren't happening. We got a lot to discuss. But before we get into tonight's updates and voicemails and everything else, let me ask, how are you? Is Saskatchewan still a place?
Unfortunately, yes.
Frozen wasteland?
It is. It really is. It's like, not like that movie Frozen, because that's kind of magical. It's, what you would, what you picture as the North Pole is Saskatchewan, just without the candy canes and Santa.
Yeah, that's right. Because that is what the North Pole is like, yeah. But you're still here, you're swinging. The minus 40-ish temperatures haven't taken you out yet.
Not yet, but It's coming.
Yeah, it's going to be a long winter. But we got a lot to get into here. I think it's been about a month since episode 14 in this series. We're here for our 15th episode covering all the updates that occur within the Jack and Lilly case. And a lot's happened, as I said. We're going to be hearing from the Nova Scotia RCMP's superintendent, Dan Martell. We're going to hear from the leader of the Nova Scotia RCMP's criminal case division. We're going to hear about some further redactions in the court documents that we've been discussing regularly, and we have a whole bunch of voicemails from listeners wanting to share their thoughts on this case. But I figure let's start at the top of the RCMP brass. RCMP Superintendent Dan Martell provided a year-end interview with Global News where he discussed the RCMP's work during 2025. During the interview, he commented in depth on the Jack and Lilly Sullivan case. So let's start at the top and hear what the leader of the Nova Scotia RCMP has to say about this case.
My name is Dan Morrow. I'm the Criminal Operations Officer here in the province of Nova Scotia.
Across Morrow's 33 years of experience as a police officer with the RCMP, he says one case has stood out to him: the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, Nova Scotia siblings who went missing from their home in Pictou County back in May.
From the outside looking in, this case seemed really rare to the public. Is it a rare one for officers as well?
It's extremely rare. I've never seen it across my career. But while it's rare, what's the part that isn't rare is the complexity of the case, like why it's taking so long, because these investigations have to be done in a methodical approach. It started to generate a lot of national media attention and even international.
Did the RCMP find that difficult to manage?
Basically, anybody that was involved with that investigation felt that elevated level of concern.
The case captured worldwide attention, putting the small community of Lansdowne Station on the map and officers under the microscope.
Why do you think so many people from even other countries were so captivated by the details of their disappearance?
Anyone who has children, obviously, from a parental aspect, it deepens that level of concern internally. What happens if it was my child, for instance? Just that initial reaction from a parental perspective would escalate that concern, obviously.
Can you go over how many tips you've received thus far in the Jack and Lilly investigation, as well as how many formal interviews have been conducted by RCMP?
There's been 1,030 tips received, and approximately 86 formal interviews have been completed within the investigation as well. That's sitting down, interviewing a person, not something that's a casual conversation while we bump into somebody along the street. It's a sit-down, structured interview, obtaining what the person knows firsthand. There's also been roughly over 8,100 functioning videos that have been actually reviewed by the team that's supervising the investigation. So there's been a lot of work conducted behind the scenes. It's been documented that 7 people have completed polygraph examinations. All 7 were found to be not lying.
The case is still considered a missing persons investigation despite the involvement of major crimes.
Would you say that this was the biggest case that Nova Scotia RCMP had to cover this year?
Yeah, it's certainly one of the most prominent ones within the province in the past year. Touched a lot of people.
Now, I wanted to open the show with that clip, mainly because it provides a good recap of everything the RCMP has done up until this point. And again, we're recording this now after the 8-month anniversary. This has been going on for quite some time. But that interview took place just around the New Year. I think just after Christmas is when that occurred. And a lot has happened since then. But let's talk a little bit about the different things he had to say. For an RCMP superintendent with 33 years experience to describe this as a standout case in his career, I think that's interesting.
Oh, yeah. And as you've pointed out many times over these past 15 episodes, is 2 of them went missing. Mm-hmm. Like, we're in 2026 now.
Yeah.
The 1-year anniversary is right around the corner.
It's just around the corner. In fact, when I was putting this episode together, I was deciding, should we focus on it being 8 months or the 9-month anniversary of their disappearance? Because we're about a week and a half, 2 weeks after the 8-month anniversary, but a week and a half,
we're right
2
in the
weeks
middle.
Prior to the 9th. So we're right there. But yeah, like the 1-year anniversary is almost knocking on the door. But a lot has happened. This is, as he said in that interview, it's gained, of course, local, national, but also international attention. Over 1,000 tips, all of which have been actioned and investigated. 86 formal interviews have been conducted in this case. And again, he made that clear that when they say a formal interview, 86 were done, he's describing like sit down, targeted interviews, to not kind of pulling up your car in front of someone's house. This is like 86 serious interviews done by RCMP.
Are there people out there that think when someone says police interview, they just like picture a chat over coffee?
I always, when I see numbers coming from police, I think it's always inflated to make them look good. So if they said, we did 100 interviews, in my mind, I'm thinking like a lot of those were probably just these quick question and answer things. I think he made a point to make it clear that there were many more people they've talked to, but 86 like formal interviews where they prepared and then went in and did the interview. So I think that's a testament to it. Over 8,000 videos, and as we already knew, 7 polygraphs. So all this to say, the RCMP has many people on this case, and they've been working it, I think, nonstop. Yet here we are, 8.5 months in. It doesn't seem from the outside that we're any closer to any kind of resolution in this case.
Well, and I think that's another reason that it's why it's a standout case, is because it's just statistically unheard of. These kids should have been found by now. Mm-hmm. And they haven't been. Yeah,
it's quite shocking, but as we'll hear and as we go here, there are some signs that things are happening behind the scenes. As we get moving, we're going to hear from the leader of the RCMP's Major Crimes Unit, and some of the things that he will say make me think that we're maybe getting closer to some kind of movement in this case. But we got a lot to get to before that. The big update that really brought us together tonight to do episode 15 in this series is what is being referred to by a lot of people as the release of new court documents related to Jack and Lilly Sullivan's disappearance and the initial investigation into it. But that's not really accurate. Now, just to recap some of the stuff we've talked about in the past, when police obtain a search warrant, Part of that process is they need to apply for the search warrant and give the courts a bit of a background of what investigation they've done so far that leads them to want the target or the subject of whatever the warrant is. And they have to also outline kind of why this information they want to obtain, be it like a cell phone or bank records or something, is relevant to their investigation. So in the early days after Jack and Lilly went missing, police put together these applications for search warrants for a variety of things that we've discussed in the past. Things like video camera footage from certain businesses, cell phone records, bank records, a variety of things. They applied for those to the courts. They successfully obtained them. But what happened was several months after that, the courts then released the search warrant applications. And we covered that in depth in prior episodes of this series. But when they were released, they were heavily redacted, meaning big sections of it had basically black marker across it, preventing the public from getting a full picture of the RCMP's investigation. So anyway, we did episodes where we talked about those. But what happened just a little over a week ago, the courts re-released those documents with less redactions, thus revealing new information to the public about the initial investigation into Jack and Lilly Sullivan's disappearance. Is that explanation clear? Do you get what we're talking about?
I'm following. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I feel the need to over-explain it because I think I'm defensive because a lot of people thought that these new documents came out, but it isn't new documents. It's new information on previously released documents.
So what would have happened that would make them allow them to redact redactions?
Well, what would have happened is this comes mainly from CBC and several other media outlets are appealing to the courts to give them more information. And this was kind of the latest win for CBC and the other media companies that are working with CBC. And that's a part of the reason why this news becomes so big, because CBC fought hard for this information. They get it, and then they report on it, of course, because it's the fruits of their labor. But I kind of think, and I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but I think a lot of what came out isn't that interesting, but there is a lot to talk about. So I figure before we get too deep into the episode, let me just kind of run down what new information is revealed through these recent court document releases, or redactions, as you put it. The first thing that the public now knows about the police investigation into the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan is that in the early days, in the first interviews with Daniel's mother, Janie, who lives in like the trailer kind of in behind Daniel and Melahya's trailer, in the original interviews that she conducted with them, she blamed Melahya's family or speculated that Melahya's family was involved. I'll read you directly from the documents. So initially this was black markered over, and it's the RCMP officer who conducted the interview paraphrasing the content of her interview. He says, "She said she is of the opinion that Melahya's side of the family had something to do with it, mainly because they didn't take part in the search and they were not letting them see the baby." So they felt the need to redact that, which I'm kind of surprised by, because I don't think it's like a big secret that the families have had disagreements, but I find it interesting that they felt the need to redact that.
Maybe they just didn't want to like fuel any public fires that were already burning. And they were like, just leave that out for now.
But that could be, but I think the things they should keep redacted are things that are sensitive to the investigation or are incredibly personal, like medical information or something like that. But I think this, something like this, I don't know why that wouldn't have been in there, but let's continue. So the documents, as they were originally released, had small redactions when discussing the different places Melahya and Daniel were at with the children in the days leading up to the disappearance. And I assumed it was just redacting maybe place names, like, what address or something like that they were visiting. But they've removed these small redactions every time the word blood work was listed. And it turns out that Melahya was getting blood work in the lead up to the disappearance. I find that interesting that they redacted it. Maybe it's because it is medical in nature, but also it made me think, like, why was she getting a lot of blood work? Well, could that mean anything? How often does a woman get blood work, or a man? Because I don't think I've had blood work in years.
Who knows? There's a plethora of reasons someone might need blood work. Could have been a yearly physical, or maybe there's something else going on. But yeah, no, I don't often get blood work either. Like, I think the last time I got blood work was when I was pregnant.
Interesting. Well, there seems to be evidence that there was something medical going on with Melahya. As another piece of information that was revealed with this new release is it concerns this it concerns Melahya leaving Daniel and leaving Lansdowne Station with their baby Meadow after an incident at the police command post. And we've talked about this before, is Melahya went to where the police were and the searchers were holding like kind of a command center for the search. She got into it with Daniel in some way there, got in the car with her mom and Meadow and left. There's just another line of text that was revealed related to that. Melahya said she went to the police command post to see what was happening firsthand. And then the next part was redacted. She started feeling sick. Something is redacted after that still. And she needed medical attention. And that's when she leaves. So what has been revealed is that, like, up until now, we thought they'd just got in a fight and she left. But they redacted a section where it seems like she got sick and needed medical attention, although there's still some parts of it that are redacted. So we don't know what's going on. But it seems pretty clear to me that there must be some health thing happening with Melahya.
Right. And like, this doesn't help my pregnancy suspicions.
Mm-hmm.
But people get sick for lots of other reasons and get blood work because of that. But also, she hasn't been seen since this all happened. Mm-hmm. Who knows what happened, but like, oh,
it is unusual. And I just thought, for me, it's everything with these redactions being removed or lifted or however we want to put it. I'm always thinking, like, why did they redact it and why now is it being revealed? I can see any kind of medical information. I can understand why that's concealed. I think it's unusual that they're now releasing it. If they didn't want the public to know about her medical stuff and blood work, what has changed? And I just can't help but like run that through my mind. But
yeah.
The interesting stuff that is revealed in this fresh release of documents is what we're going to get into. Anyone who has read the news in the last week or so about this case will see headlines such as Jack and Lily's mother accuses stepfather Daniel Martell of being abusive. All that comes from this next section here. In the initial documents, there's sections where they were interviewing Melahya and Daniel separately about the nature of their relationship and life at home. There were previously several redactions in the section of the documents that outlined Melahya's description of their living situation. But there's less redactions now. Let me read you the paragraph that generated so many headlines about Daniel Martell being abusive last week. I'm reading from the new information. When asked if Daniel was physically abusive, Melahya said he would try to block her, hold her down, and once he pushed her. She said he would also take her phone from her when she was trying to call her mom, which would sometimes be physical and hurt. So that is, again, the words of an RCMP officer paraphrasing the interview he did with Melahya. But they felt the need up until now to redact this information. What do you read into that?
Whether the taking of the phone is physical and hurts or not, that's also abuse. Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally believe Melahya. And we'll get there. Like, we're going to discuss how Daniel adamantly denies all of these claims. But I'll bet you he doesn't view that as abuse. Just as Malahya's like kind of on the fence, like, well, he didn't beat the shit out of me, but he did this, this, and this. Like,
yeah, taking a phone physically from someone who's trying to call their mom, that's a very bad look.
That's abusive, cut and dry.
Yeah, but what I wish, especially since this was in the news and is now a part of the story, I just wish there was more detail there. Like, was this something that happened, or was this a regular thing? Because it does say he would also take her phone when she tried to call her mom, which makes it seem like it was an ongoing thing and not this one fight that got crazy or something.
Yeah, no, I totally believe Melahya 100%. And I'll bet you it was worse than she describes it. Like, I think it was just so normal to her that it was life, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the new information that's released makes things look pretty bad in the home, if not worse. I shouldn't say pretty bad, makes things look worse in the home than what we had thought previously. The next redaction that's been lifted, I'll read a bit about. It concerns Daniel's comments on their relationship and life at home, because he too was asked about abuse and fighting and physical stuff. Here's his response. Regarding their family living situation, there was a sentence that was redacted. It says, Daniel said they were recently fighting about money, and then something after that was redacted. So that shows that money was an issue and there was fights about it. We knew money was an issue, but I think this is the first time we see that it was an issue to the point that Melahya and Daniel were fighting about it.
Oh no. We've known this.
But did we hear it from them, or was it something where we just heard that there was trouble in money, like there were money problems? Because we've heard from other people saying, like, Daniel was coming here for food and we needed to drive them places because of their car. But this, I think, is the first time we heard from Daniel or Melahya that, no, we were fighting about money.
Okay. Yeah, I think you make a good point there.
Let me continue to read on, though, because it gets weirder here. This is the RCMP officer paraphrasing his interview with Daniel about his relationship with Melahya. Everything I'm about to read after this sentence that I'm making now was previously redacted. They had been together for about 3 years, and it moved pretty quickly. He moved into Melahya's grandmother's house with her after about 2 weeks. They met on a Facebook dating site. He said their relationship is good. They have ups and downs like any couple. He said they would yell at each other when they were fighting, but there was no physical violence in their relationship. So I guess that just sheds a bit more light on the dysfunction, but I think what's relevant there is, yes, they were fighting. It was about money. Daniel says it wasn't physical. Melahya says he would hold me down. He would grab my phone, and it was physical and hurt. So like you had said previously, maybe it's just Daniel and Melahya maybe have a different idea about what's physical.
I also find it funny how he specifically says, like, yeah, we'd yell at each other, but it never got physical. Like, isn't that a little specific when we weren't talking about physical fighting?
Yeah, I get your point, but I'm hesitant to read too much into the exact wording because we're not hearing direct quotes from Daniel.
Right.
This is a summary of the RCMP's interview with him. So it makes it that much harder. It's like we're literally just getting like peanuts here on a trail, or breadcrumbs of what the case actually is. And again, that maybe perhaps that's a testament to how much the public knows about this and how much more exists behind the scenes or under the surface. Last redaction that's been lifted that I'll mention, and then we can get into the meat and potatoes of this, is for some reason, Melahya's phone number was previously redacted. In the new version of the documents, it isn't.
Well, shouldn't it be? That's personal information.
I would think maybe it's not her phone number anymore, but one of the search warrant applications was for her cell phone records. So every time her cell phone appeared in that was redacted. In the new documents, it isn't. I don't know what that tells us other than weird that they would release that. And I hope that's not her number anymore, because screenshots of all this stuff is all over the internet. And
yeah, to me, that's the strangest redacted redaction.
Yeah. I can only imagine that's just not her number anymore, so there's no need of protecting it.
Maybe. That hopefully it's not given to someone else, that poor person.
Yeah. Anyway, everything we just went through about these redactions was a bit laborious to read through them, but all of this is just to set the foundation for what's to come, because we're going to hear of Daniel's response to the allegations that he was abusive. We're going to hear CBC's coverage of this new information being revealed, and we're going to hear from the RCMP's leader of major crimes, who is basically the man in charge of this, of the RCMP's investigation into this case. And a lot of that discussion is going to be related to the information revealed in this new release of documents. Let's take a quick break, then we'll get into it. So Madeleine, we just went through all of the new information that's been revealed. It has stimulated an incredible amount of news coverage and discussion around the case. We're going to get into some of it now. Just to recap a little bit of the new information that was revealed with this new document release, here's how CBC News paraphrased what we now know that we didn't know before this.
Melahya Brooks Murray and her boyfriend Daniel Martell were together for about 3 years before Jack and Lilly disappeared on May 2nd. All of them lived in the Lansdowne trailer where the children were last seen. According to the documents, Martell told police they'd been fighting about money. His mother also referenced financial difficulties. The new records disclosed that in an RCMP interview, Brooks Murray said Martell would try to block her, hold her down, and once he pushed her. She said he would also take her phone from her when she tried to call her mom, which would sometimes be physical and hurt. Martell provides a different account. He told police their relationship was good and they had ups and downs like any other couple. He said they would yell at each other when they were fighting, but there was no physical violence in their relationship.
So when you hear condensed to that short of a statement, is this new information, is this a big deal, this new information to you? Does it change anything about how you feel about the case?
Not really. The only thing that it does is it makes me dislike Daniel more. At the beginning of all this, I was Team Daniel. And as we learn more about him, I'm like, no, ma'am. I don't like this guy.
I've kind of had a lot of the same feelings. In the beginning, I felt like he came across as this big puppy dog who was putting himself out there for the children, for his stepchildren, basically. The big revelation that changed things for me with Daniel was the revelation that he had drug problems. I just didn't see that, and it was hard drugs, and that really shocked me. I didn't see that coming. This just looks worse, but for me, it's no big surprise. I know they were having financial troubles. Financial troubles will manifest all sorts of other problems in a home, and it seems like this home had all of that going on. There was the financial troubles. There seemed to be issues with looking after the children. The place was run down and shabby. CPS seemed to be getting involved. Things weren't going great at school. So none of this really surprises me. What it really illustrates is that these kids were in a bad situation in the lead up to their disappearance. But let's keep moving here. We've heard previously from Superintendent Dan Merrill, who's the leader of the RCMP in Nova Scotia. Who we're going to hear from now is Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon. He's Nova Scotia RCMP's officer in charge of major crime and behavioral sciences. So he is the lead on the case, the investigation into Jack and Lilly Sullivan's disappearance. He spoke to CBC about the newly released information we discussed, and he shared the nature of the relationship, the RCMP's belief that the relationship between Melahya and Daniel at the time of the disappearance is a part of their investigation. Let's listen to some of the things he said to CBC, because I think this is really interesting.
RCMP Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon confirmed the nature of their relationship at the time of the children's disappearance is part of the investigation.
Are any of the children's family members considered suspects in this case?
I wouldn't say anybody's a suspect. Again, we continue to gather information and whatever evidence that we are able to find, and we'll make our decisions based on that. But I'm not in a position to really comment on suspects or anything like that at this time.
The case is still being investigated under the Missing Persons Act and has not moved to a criminal investigation. But in new submissions, the Crown noted that while there is currently no reasonable grounds to believe a crime has taken place, it could become criminal.
When they state that there are no reasonable grounds for a criminal offense, what that really says to me is that there's currently not enough evidence to make an arrest for a crime, but a crime is not obviously being ruled out. It's a very important linguistic distinction.
Whenever we listen to interviews with police officers and RCMP officers, we often will comment on how careful they are with their words. And that leads to a lot of reading between the lines. But to say that the nature of the relationship between Daniel and Melahya is a part of their investigation, we could take that a few ways. First of all, of course it is, because their children went missing. But is it a big part? I wish the follow-up question was how big of a part on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I don't know. That is a good question. I don't know.
Mhm.
But maybe is that kind of foreshadowing? Do they know something we don't? And
They
and
must.
they know that their relationship has is a big part of it. I don't know.
When you go through the court documents that we've talked about, the search warrant applications, a lot of it is about life in the home. We hear Daniel's mother, Daniel and Melahya, all interviewed about that and discussing it. It seems like the people in the children's lives who would be the main focus of an investigation, at least in the beginning, are all people who would be involved in family or life in the home, be it like, cousins, uncles, whatever, grandparents. I just feel like whatever happened to these kids likely involves the situation in the home and the family dynamic. And again, at this point now, 8.5 months later, they're all pointing the finger at each other, it seems.
Do you think that they would say that if they thought it was a random abduction or like a stranger abduction? I don't think so.
Yeah, let's say if the police at this point, they must have a theory that they're working on. If in their mind that theory is that it has nothing to do with the living situation or the stepfather or the mom or anyone in the family, it was probably some random weirdo. Yeah, I think they'd be a little more careful in their words.
Absolutely.
A lot of what's coming out just makes them look worse and worse.
Right. That's exactly it. Maybe they're just like kind of slowly releasing the answer. I don't know, but something's up for sure.
I promised some voicemails tonight with listener thoughts on the case. I have one that is going to fit in perfectly here. This is from an anonymous listener who wants to speak in defense of the family's lifestyle and life in the home.
I just listened to your most recent podcast about Lilly and Jack, and I'm driving and I'm thinking, and I don't have a theory about what happened to them. There's so many possibilities. I just feel like there's a lot of judgment being placed on the stepfather and the mother. I just feel like we're not all born into privilege, and they may have been doing the best they could with what they had. We don't know that they were bad parents. We don't know that Daniel is a bad guy, even though a lot of things are being said about him and pointed at him. As a parent of two grown, very independent children, I can say that I definitely laid in bed and let them play on their own at the ages of 4 and 6 on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. It's easy for people who don't have kids or who don't have kids that age yet to say that that's a terrible parent to do that, or that they would never leave their kids unsupervised, but trust me, you will. And so it really bugs me when people go on about that. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Love the podcast.
Yeah, so I think when she's defending life in the home and the family, I think she's talking more about like the state of the home and the whole like sleeping in thing, because a lot of people had a hard time with the idea that Daniel and Melahya stayed in bed with the baby while 4-year-old Jack and 6-year-old Lilly were awake in the home. And I never really felt like that was something that they should like be burned at the stake for. I don't think it's as uncommon as maybe some people would think, as that caller suggested. I think we've talked about that before, but anything about that call you want to address?
No, she's right, and she makes very valid points. I started this series off with this attitude, with like, you don't know they're bad parents. We don't really know anything. But I also, over this series, I've thought about it, and when you think about like even just people acquaintances, close friends, whatever, the amount of people that are unhappy in their relationships but stay is staggering. And you find that more and more as you get older. As you get older, you realize very few people are happier in their relationship.
That's a good point.
But they stay. But that's another episode.
And I also think, as far as like the state of the property and their financial situation, I think a lot of people just don't realize how hard some people have it.
Absolutely.
Like there are people, like I know people who are broke but there are people who are that they would think are broke, and then there are people that those broke people would think are even are broke. So there's such levels to it. And Daniel and Melahya, I think, we're probably in a financial situation that the majority of the people listening could never imagine being in.
No.
And it would be hard to understand or imagine what that would do to a family with two kids who were thought to have had special needs that were going through autism assessments and stuff. You have the baby Meadow. It's there's a lot going on, and I'm not excusing them. I'm just saying that family and that home was not like the majority of people listening to this podcast's home life is, fortunately.
Exactly. And yeah, like people just don't realize how like financial issues are probably the number one reason for like turmoil in the home.
I would think so. It would definitely raise the pressure, especially with the state of the world now. Like, we could talk about inflation and housing and the price of gas and everything else. Like, I often think when I'm at the grocery store or wherever getting gas, getting fast food, I often think like, how do people that are even like struggling at all manage to get by? But
right. And what we have to remember too is like with Daniel and Melahya, so not only do we have, financial issues and just, their lifestyle isn't amazing, but they're young. They had kids young. They're still learning too. Just having a baby not long ago. I often think like, I don't know how anyone younger than me does this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how anyone does it when they're 16 or 20 or whatever in a chaotic environment. Like it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and it seems like disaster struck. Like it doesn't get much worse than your two kids going missing. So yeah. But we've talked a lot about Daniel. We spent some time earlier on the allegations of abuse. We got to get into Daniel's response to this because, of course, he's going to respond when something happens in this case. Daniel is generally front and center answering questions, and Melahya is nowhere to be found. That was what happened again this time with the release of this new information. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll hear Daniel address the allegations of abuse against him in a very Daniel Martell way. Shortly after the release of this new information and the allegations that Melahya accused Daniel of being abusive and news coverage reporting the same, Daniel appeared on Global News to defend himself and to address the allegations that he's abusive. Let's listen in on some of this, and I think we'll have a lot to say about it.
Newly unsealed court documents in Lilly and Jack Sullivan's missing persons case are raising questions about the relationship between the children's mother, Melahya Brooks Murray, and stepfather Daniel Martell. Brooks Murray declined Global News' request for comment.
Have you ever tried to block Melahya, hold her down, or push her?
No, all those allegations are false. And as I said, it was just to paint me in a bad light. That's basically why there's all of those allegations of abuse came out. I never physically abused Melahya.
Martell says he approved of these redactions being lifted, adding not much has changed when it comes to his public reputation.
I've been, trying to keep the public up to date as much as possible. My image hasn't changed at all. It was always Daniel's evil, Daniel's a monster, and with that painted narrative, the public automatically will just jump to the belief of guilt.
He says he provided his DNA to run forensics on Lily's blanket, which was found in the woods by family members on May 2nd.
They didn't need a warrant to have my DNA, so I was willing to do it. I watched them sign on the consent form, no criminal involvement in the case of Lilly and Jack. So it was nice to see that, that box checked for no criminal involvement. I signed my name on the consent sheet.
The disappearance of the Sullivan siblings is still being treated as a missing persons investigation, despite the involvement of major crimes.
But when they do have a suspect and they dive into investigating that suspect or group of individuals, then it will pivot to a criminal investigation at that point.
What does that mean?
So that is interesting. So first, let's start right at the beginning. I have a lot to say about that. The first thing is when they asked if he was abusive or when they asked if he was abusive, it was a straight denial. Like, no, those allegations are untrue. Like There was no suggestion from his words that he was going to own up to any part of that.
Which it would have been a better look to take accountability and be like, yeah, you know what, that did happen.
Yeah, we got, there were some fights that got pretty far, and we were
because
grabbing
she didn't say like he punched me in the face, and what she's accusing him of is, I don't want to say minor because it's not, because it's abuse and not good, but like it could be worse.
No, this is a straight denial. But what I found interesting is that he says, that those allegations are untrue and that information was released to paint me in a bad light. And now what I think about that's interesting is he goes on to use words like this narrative, this painted narrative, but these allegations of abuse that were released, he says if it was released to paint him in a bad light, this is not like new stuff. What we're seeing is information on documents that outline interviews that were done like the day the kids went missing and the day after. So this isn't like new stuff. This is interviews that happened, again, just after the kids went missing. So to say
before he was painted as a monster in the media.
Exactly. So this is predating that. And if he's suggesting that the police release this to make him look bad, why would they do that? For one, I don't think they would do that. But if so, why? It just doesn't make any sense. But, and then another thing I want to say about it is he said he approved the release of these documents or this information. I don't think the police or the courts would care much if Daniel Martell is okay with them removing these redactions. It almost seems like if he said that, is he trying to make it seem like I have control over this? Like, the courts will do what I say.
That's what
I thought it was.
That's what I got from it. Like,
okay, I'm glad it wasn't just me.
They don't give a shit what you think.
You're the puppet master of what the courts are doing with the police documents? I don't think so.
Also, something else that really confused me was the consent forms and that all. I was like, no criminal involvement. I signed it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that means nothing. Just so you know.
They wanted to get his consent to get his DNA to use it to identify the blanket that they found. They had him sign a form, and on the form there was a box that was like, is this person criminally involved or not? He thinks that since the police officers checked no, that kind of clears him. But no, I just feel like what it probably is, if they have like a warrant to get your DNA because they think you did it, you check the other box. They're just
right.
I don't think that says much of anything, as well as this is something that would have happened in the week the children disappeared. It's not like this new thing. I don't think this is something that happened. They found that blanket during a search. So I think this is probably old news. One other thing I want to mention, I touched on this earlier, is he described it as this painted narrative that he's a bad guy. I guess maybe I can understand why he would think that everyone's out to get him, because I've read probably a lot of the same stuff about him that he read online. But to include what Melahya said the day the kids went missing and what the RCMP have released as a part of this quote unquote painted narrative, that just says a lot, I think, about his mindset on what's happening around here.
Right, because the police in Melahya did not paint the narrative. The public did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's blaming the wrong people.
It seems that, yeah, and to include this in it, like Melahya's words, I have to take as fact. If let's say she did something horrible and she's trying to cover it up, I can't imagine she would do it by these like vague, suggestive statements in an interview the day after, knowing that like this is going to be a part of their search warrant, and then they'll release it and it'll make him look bad. Like I just don't think
in January of next year.
Yeah, I just don't think that's how a cover-up works, or to try to like make him a patsy to the whole thing. I just don't think that. I don't think they're playing 3D chess at that level in this case.
No, I totally agree with you.
I will give him credit for standing in the line of fire and going on the news and defending himself about this.
Yeah. Oh man. Week 2, I would have been out of the spotlight because there's no way.
Yeah. I'm surprised that Melahya has to this level. It's, 8.5 months. She has disappeared for all intents and purposes. Eventually, I think she will surface. And
for sure.
Something that is, and when I say surface, I mean publicly, a public appearance by her on her own accord. I'm thinking now, like I covered for quite some time the Portapic mass shootings that happened in 2020. The gunman in that case, his common law partner was a big part of the story, and she all but disappeared. And we didn't hear a word from her. She just kind of came out of the woodwork and announced that she's releasing a book, and she made a couple media appearances that are more so promotion of the book. But it's just kind of, I see her role a little in that story, a little bit like Melahya's role. Like she's someone that's in the middle of the story and is an important part of the story, but is completely out of the public eye and has made no public statements since the very early days. I think, if and when Melahya decides to go public with her side of the story, it is going to be fascinating for everyone following this case. And I know I'll be interested in that.
Oh, absolutely. See, and on the other hand of that, the more, now we're 8-9 months after the disappearance of these kids, the more that Daniel, their stepfather, is still loud in the media. I'm like, is there some sort of like narcissism going on here, or
who's painting a narrative?
Right.
Is it Melahya?
The one that hasn't said anything to the public ever, or the guy that's constantly in front of the camera. So I don't know.
Interesting. I'm not gonna point any fingers, but
like I said earlier, the longer this goes on, the less I like Daniel.
I think what we just covered here are the main updates that I want to discuss. Let's take the next few moments, the end of the episode. We can listen to some listener voicemails. I got quite a few voicemails from people following the series that want to share their thoughts on the various elements of it. Anyone out there who has any theories on anything we discussed tonight, or anything you want to say about anything we discussed tonight, go to thecanadiangothic.com/contact. Use the voice recorder and we'll include your thoughts in an upcoming episode. But let's go out tonight with a listener named Stacy from Illinois who has some thoughts on Daniel's mom, on Daniel's uncle, and on the state of the RCMP case. So we're going to be revisiting some past stuff we talked about, mainly regarding Daniel's mother's timeline of the events of that morning. But Stacy raises quite a few interesting points. Her voicemail is a couple minutes long, but there's a lot packed into it. Listen to this.
Hey, Jordan. My name's Stacy, and I'm calling from the States, Illinois specifically. And I've been following your coverage on Jack and Lilly Sullivan. I wanted to bring something up in regards to Daniel Martell's mom, her timeline the morning of the kids' disappearance. She says that she wakes up, she feeds her chickens, she talked to her brother on the phone, and he asked her if she wanted a ride into town with him. And she told him, go ahead, go into town without me. I'm going to go back to bed. So she goes back to sleep with her dog. And then what woke her up was Daniel and Melahya out on the property, and that they were yelling for the kids. And that when she saw them, they said that like Jack and Lilly are missing. So one thing that caught me off guard when I heard that was that Daniel and Melahya wouldn't have already, been banging on her trailer door, asking if she's, 1, seen them, 2, if they're with her, 3, to check her trailer. That really caught me off guard. Aside from that, she said that her brother calls her again and, shows them the call logs. And I guess another thing that confuses me is if my siblings, one of them were to call me in the morning, ask me if I wanted to go somewhere with them and tell them, no, go ahead without me. I need to get some more sleep. I don't think that they would call me just an hour later. And the fact that he was possibly planning on coming and picking up his sister, and then the kids would have gone missing during that time, And then once they go missing, he, phones again. I thought that was a little suspicious, and I just didn't know if you guys saw anything that has been gathered or released to the public. I just didn't know if any of it focused on Daniel Martell's uncle. Another note from experience and being married to a detective, I feel in my gut the RCMP does know more. So hopefully everyone will get answers soon.
A lot of interesting points there about Daniel's mother and uncle that morning, because I did find that interesting. But let's start actually with the first comment she made, which was she woke up to Daniel and Melahya in the backyard yelling for Jack and Lilly, not knocking on her door saying, "Are Jack and Lilly in there?" Because you would just when I play it through in my mind, if I get up and Jack and Lilly aren't in the house, and I'm like, "Oh crap, they're not in here. They must be out in the swing set in the backyard." They're not on the swings. The next place I would think of is their grandmother's trailer is next to the swing. So like they must be in with their grandmother. Let's go ask her. But they didn't do that. Instead, they're in the backyard, like in the driveway, yelling for Jack and Lilly, which is odd. It just strikes me as weird.
See, this never even crossed my radar, but it is incredibly weird.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah.
But yes, everything that Stacy said is so valid.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it's
really shedding light.
Yeah, it's just strange when you look at the timeline through a microscope. It is weird they didn't run to her house as the third to Janie's house as the third place that they would check. They're not in our house, they're not in the backyard on the swing set. They must be there. That is unusual. The whole thing with her brother, yeah, why did he call back an hour later? I'm sure we don't have any information about him through the court documents, the search warrant applications, no in-depth information. I'm sure he would have answered some questions and been interviewed. He's definitely one of the 86 people that had a formal interview with the police, but it is odd that he turns up again.
It's also kind of sus that in this CBC interview with Janie, doesn't she like pull out her phone and show the camera the call logs?
Yeah, to prove that, when he called and stuff, because that was a part of her timeline for that morning was based on his calls to her, but it is sus.
I'm glad someone pointed this out because this is, interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Anyone out there who has any thoughts, theories, opinions, or anything to say about the Jack and Lilly case, again, go to thecanadiangothic.com/contact, and we'd like to hear from you. But for now, Madeleine, I think we covered the main updates. And again, this has been almost a month since the last episode we've done on this case. It's a trickle of information now. I think the public is moving on from this story, and I think that's because so little information is coming out. If Melahya was going to come out of the woodwork and talk, I think now is the time to do it, just to make things happen. Because a lot of people now, and I come across a lot of posts about this case, and I can get a sense based on the interaction and stuff of how much attention a case has, and I do see this turning into a forgotten case in the public eye, and I hate to think that could happen.
Until a big break comes through, it's unfortunately just the way it works.
Yeah,
with anything.
It's the cycle of the public following a story. It's very big. It's so much action in the beginning. New developments seem fast and furious. Then as it slows down, people move on to other things, and the people who are focused on this story, it seems like they get so deep into the weeds that a lot of the discussion is just bogged down by like nonsense and infighting. And there's a lot of that in the Jack and Lilly story if you look online, but there is still good information coming out. It's fewer and further between, and it often comes out in little spurts, like the release of slightly less redacted court documents. But at least it gives us a bit more information on what was going on in that home. And I can say now, it doesn't seem to be anything good going on there. I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the Canadian Gothic. Before we wrap things up here, I want to send positive vibes to everyone affected by this case, and I also want to call out to anyone close to the case to reach out to me. I'd be happy to add your voice to the show if you care to speak with me. Now, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode, but before we part, I have some thanks to pass out. First, a big thanks to Madeline Klein for joining us for this episode. Thanks to Monty Datta, who contributes to the music, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides our intro and outro voiceovers. But then lastly, and most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening to the Canadian Gothic, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. Now, on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Danielle, Amber, and Rebecca, we appreciate you. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium right now at thecanadiangothic.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know why they should listen. Your support is very much appreciated. So with all that said, until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let us know if you see anything weird.
Thank you for listening to Canadian Gothic.